podcast. I'm in Max. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Why, hello.
Hey!
Welcome to Season 24, Episode 2 of Happy Jacks RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
I'm Stork.
I'm Joey.
And if we're here, and if you're here, it must be Friday Night Happy Jacks.
I suppose so.
I mean, whenever you're listening to this or consuming this podcast,
Right.
too.
It could be Tuesday morning for all we know for you.
I'm sorry.
Hey, tomorrow, this is Friday, by the way. We're saying this on Friday, so
It
if you're
is?
listening...
Friday the 15th of March.
Right. So if you...
Ides of March.
If you are hearing this and it's the 17th or later, it's too late.
It's
so
too
ignore
late.
what I'm about to say.
Yes.
I can open my beer with it. We're going to be playing tomorrow. Doors open at 7 p.m. at the Queen Mary. The Poxtaboggers, Merry Wives of Windsor, Story Wrens, and Sportive Tricks are all going to be playing. We're in 3 separate salons on the ship. $25 at the door. QueenMary.com if you want information on it. We will be there. Doors open at 7. They said they might open the doors a little early because sales have been good.
Yeah.
So,
Yay!
and I would get there early. And that's that. Oh, in this episode of Happy Jacks RPG Podcast, Steve from SoCal writes in about players and PC perceptions. Johnny sends us an email about classes in D&D. And Craig, who's Hoodoo on the forum, asks about getting players to learn the rules. Good luck. But first, if you'd like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We have a forum. happyjacksforum.com. happyjacksforum.com. You can go there and talk shit about us.
No, well, yeah. We'll see you, but
Well, that's what the internet's for.
that is. That's accurate.
Just as Kimmy.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
We're also on many of the social meteors. We're on the Twitter, HappyJacksRPG, all one word, and we're on Instagram, HappyJacksRPG, all one word. We're on Facebook, HappyJacksRPG, all one word, and MeWe, HappyJacksRPG, all one word.
Yeah.
And you got a really cool thing on MeWe the other day. I was really surprised.
Someone posted a picture of
Hey,
CA Dave.
if you're that
from
someone, let us know who you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, that
We
was
need your
awesome.
name.
We would like to put that on the webpage,
Yeah, it's
but I don't
fun.
want to do that unless I know who the artist is and they give us permission to do it.
Yeah, it's fantastic fan art. Super cool. So, yeah, thank you for that. We always love doing that. So if you do art for us, send us it, and we will put it on the website and credit you.
Yeah, but we need your name.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of great pieces of artwork over the past that we can't put up because we don't know who did it.
Yeah.
So whoever did the vampire one with all of us in the black and white drawing, who are you? Because we want to credit you because that thing's amazing. And no one's ever going to see it unless you tell us. Anyway, I'm sorry.
All right.
You were on. You were
And
doing
also,
business.
we stream the show live. You go to happyjacks.org/live at 7 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays, and we stream the show. This show, right now, that you're watching or listening to, you can enjoy it live and look at our faces in the face
Sorry.
and talk in the chat room. I would call it the troll room, but
Call it the scat.
it's not as
It's
trolly
not.
as a lot of other,
No,
other
Stuart,
chat
let's
rooms.
never call it the scat
Fantastic.
room.
No.
Never call it the
scat
scat room.
No.
Hard pass.
It
Scat has another meaning too.
does?
Yeah, scatological humor.
That doesn't.
I thought that was humor about jazz, vocal jazz.
No, it's poopy. Poopy humor.
Oh, it's not very good in humor? All right.
We actually have an incredibly good community,
We do.
both on the
Yeah.
forums
Yes.
and on in our chats and stuff on all the different things. Like that's actually one of the things people like say a lot is like, you know, a lot of like places online are toxic and it, like especially for like Twitch and stuff. Like our community's the best. We love you guys,
They are.
you guys
Love.
and girls and folks. I'm sorry, I'm trying to work on that. Go ahead.
That's nothing to see here. Glossing over. Moving on.
Yes.
Clarifying player/PC perceptions from Steven SoCal. All right. Happiest of Jackers and Jillers.
Now, see, that's a new one. Jillers. Never heard Jillers. They're always so clever with their intros.
Absolutely.
Did everyone's seen the frickin' butterflies, right?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Just so for the rest of the world doesn't know this, but there's a butterfly here called the painted lady butterfly, and it spends its winter in California deserts. And unlike, I guess most butterflies can only eat 1 or 2 varieties of plants. All the rest of the plants they can't stand the toxins. but the painted lady butterfly can eat like a dozen different plants.
Because it's from the desert. It's like Mongols. They're like the Fremen of butterflies.
Right, exactly.
They're tough-ass things, and they just...
So we've had so much rain in the last 2 months. I don't know, I have no idea how much, but it's been a shit.
40 days and 40 nights. It's
Right,
been a
yes.
minute.
Yeah, I started building a boat in my backyard. So,
Is that what that is?
yes, and I'm making it out of dog poop.
Scatological.
Literal poop deck.
I'm making it out of corpalites,
Ew.
except they're not
All right.
finished.
Yeah.
Anyway, these butterflies had this huge population growth because suddenly in the desert, all of these desert plants that they feed on have all just gone berserk because there's so much water. I guess last year the population of these butterflies, they estimated it at like 50,000. This year they're estimating it at 1 billion.
Yeah, they're calling it a mega swarm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
as I'm driving home from work, there's just bugs all heading to the northeast.
It's like, and it's like you feel like such a murderer because, like, no matter where you drive in LA right now, you are
Gonna hit a butterfly.
You're killing butterflies
Oh, yeah.
constantly the whole way there. It's like
And
insane.
The coolest part is right now they have an enormous amount of yellow gooey fat in their systems. And they're born with that,
Yeah.
right? When they become butterflies, and that's the energy they use to migrate.
Yeah.
Because they will fly pretty much nonstop,
Yeah.
a long way. I
Yeah.
mean, they'll go all the way up in Northern California, right?
Till the birds eat
And
them.
they can fly at like 20 miles an hour, and they'll fly for a couple days or something like that, living off of this gooey yellow fat inside their systems. Which is why if they hit your windshield,
Yeah.
you get a big thing of gooey yellow fat,
Yeah.
and that's their food for the next day and a half.
Yeah, it's nice. Although I'm going to say it has been delightful because they're also like all over all the schools and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And the kids in my school have been losing their minds, super excited. Like, we read the articles about them. Like, they are very invested in the butterflies now. They're very careful to chase them but not touch them. Like, it's adorable, and it warms my heart every single
Right.
recess.
Master Vidar, monarch butterflies only eat milkweed. And and I guess most butterflies will only eat one or two things, but these things can eat almost everything, but they can eat a lot of different.
It's an
plants.
invasion from the desert from super tough butterflies.
And we will see another swarm of them in the fall because they head back to the deserts and they breed along the way. So there's going to be a whole bunch of butterflies heading southeast.
It's the Happy Jack's Smithsonian National Geographic channel today.
Our
Wait,
entomology
what are they?
minutes.
The xenobiologists.
Yes.
The Happy Jack Society of Xenobiologists.
As opposed to the Happy Jack's Association of Xenologists.
Bloody splinter.
And those are all inside jokes from Exodus. So
All right.
if you don't listen to that, AP,
There
sorry.
you go. Which can be found on our actual plays.
Yes.
I hope this letter finds you well and enjoying the tastiest of desserts on this, the day of pie. That's actually yesterday.
Yay!
I offer this up entirely out of love for this geekiest of holidays and not at all as a timestamp to see how long it takes for the email to be read.
Liar.
And now
Apologies.
your question is going to be like, did Steve put that in just because I wrote that? Or it's like Schrodinger's email.
Right.
Did it get read because I put that I wasn't timing it? Or would it have been read anyway? Or it's amazing. It's funny.
Apologies to those listeners from non-U.S. locations who don't get to celebrate Pi on 3/14 because they metric.
Right, it's backwards. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Weird 10-month calendars.
That's how that works. So,
10-hour clocks. All right. I'd like to bend your ear, or I, in the case of the written communique, on the topic of player versus character assumptions and when it's useful to clarify them. As a case study, I'm going to use a couple discussions during the Ashes of Exodus episode 3 that I was just listening to. It's actually Exodus. Ashes of Exodus was the original campaign, but whatever. No matter. No worries. Note in advance, my interpretations of these interactions may be incorrect, but hopefully these examples still bear worthy discussion. In a couple instances, it seemed like different players had wildly different assumptions about the different topics and or were remembering different bits of information, but not clarifying and justifying the justification for their actions. This seems to lead to increased character tension, sorry Canada, and at times may have been artificial. First example. When the group was arguing about the number of lurkers which had gathered and caused trouble. This is when we were on Dolan's Peak.
Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah. It seems as if some of the players had forgotten that in the previous session there were tracking rolls and investigation which confirmed that there were only 3 of the creatures around. Some of the players seemed to remember this and thus kept speaking as if it were an absolute fact that there were only 3, while other players seemed to be calling the fact into question, but neither player stopped for an out-of-character discussion on this disconnect. Do you think it is wise, as a GM or fellow player, to interject and remind people of previously gathered data and or ask people to explain why their character is doing certain things that seem unusual? Note, in this case, it was exacerbating the already established friction between Kimmy's conspiracy theorist and Pooja's skeptic. But at times, an out-of-character disconnect seemed to ramp up more than intended. I don't know if there was an out-of-character disconnect.
No.
That was...
We can talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, I really appreciate the reconciliation later in that episode.
Yeah.
Example the second. It seemed clear to me that Stu's intent with the Exodus Foundation was to be a trusted home for player characters, but at some point it seemed pretty clear that most, perhaps all, of the players were viewing the Exodus Foundation with nearly as much distrust and animosity as they have for the heartless superpowers that the Exodus Foundation was intended to counteract. As a GM who is seeing his or her creation being misunderstood, how much do you step in and try to correct that misunderstanding, and how much do you just roll with it and say, why, yes, the Exodus Foundation really is a nefarious organization? I now have more plot fodder that I didn't think of. End quote. Example the third. Similar to above, but less soft concepty and more hard facty. A couple of times so far in the series, Stork has made comments about the military/government having ansibles, presumably allowing faster than light communication, while it has been stated at different times that such technology does not exist and that communication only travels at light speed or via starships using the physical jump drives.
Yeah, I keep pushing the envelope, hoping at one point he's going to crack.
Nope.
And we'll find out.
That's one of the conceits of the setting, is that
Yeah.
is that communication travels at the speed of travel.
Yeah.
It is. Obviously, you could also use this kind of misunderstanding to either mold your universe such that the military really does have FTL communication, but the public just doesn't know about it. You could also just take that and turn it into another conspiracy, i.e. Vesa thinks that the military has FTL communication. Insert, that's like, oh, wait.
Your
Oh, no,
opinion,
wait.
man.
No,
There it is.
I got it.
Yeah.
Wait.
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Right. But oh, by the way, there's a online company that's selling nothing but Big Lebowski swag,
As all companies should.
and some of it is
All
amazing.
companies. I don't want a Big Lebowski bath bomb. Like, that's not something I want.
Yeah.
Is it shaped like a ferret? A marmot?
Marmot.
I was mentioning it smells like a White Russian.
It's like a marmot bath bomb.
Yes, it smells like a White Russian. It smells like
I'm
Kahlua and
sure
cream.
there's an audience for that product, and I am not that.
Yeah. Sorry, I am not
A
the one.
marmot-shaped bath bomb?
No,
No?
no, that's weird. I'm sure there are people out there who want that, not me. Sorry.
Nice marmot, man.
As it might be evidenced by the long-winded email, I err on the side of voicing my assumptions whenever I think there might be misunderstandings. That's often overkill. Cheers and enjoy some pie.
I did.
Stephen from SoCal, the grimace on the new
Yeah.
question mark forum.
Yes.
All right.
All right, should we just go through each example?
Yeah,
in
let's go.
order?
Yeah, start.
Sure.
Sorry.
Alright.
Example first.
So we definitely were arguing about that. Some of that I think was us remembering it differently, but I think also there was also a bit of I know, at least on my part, like my character's a truther. Like they are like, no, there could be more out there. Like that's definitely a part of my character. So thinking, even though there had been like an investigation role, like, well, yeah, but like people miss things. It was sort of like my character's take on things. Like, yes, we thought there were only 3, but there's a whole planet of these animals. It's possible there were more around, and maybe we just didn't find it. Like, as a player character, you're not like, well, he rolled a great success, so I know I got all the information. Like my character, like I know that, but Riley, my character, doesn't know that. So it's like maybe we missed something.
Yeah, I was in a similar boat. I just assumed, okay, yeah, we found our investigation roll showed that there was 3. That doesn't mean there can't be more out there.
Right.
We found 3. I thought the exact same thing, and it wasn't coming from conspiracy plot. It was just like it makes more sense that there could be more out there. So
Right.
that was my thought on it. Like, it wasn't a miscommunication or misunderstanding. It was, yes, we found 3. That doesn't mean there isn't more.
For the record, I'm in your camp as well. I had the same sort of thing, which is like there's only 3 in the area, but there's the whole planet full of them. But more to the point, because this is actually the question is
Now, let me ask you a question. Did I give the impression that there were only 3?
I don't
whole
think
planet?
so.
No.
Okay, all right.
We knew there were more than that on the planet, but there were, when we rolled, we got the answer that there were 3 involved.
3 in this
that.
vicinity.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Now, more to the point, which is as a GM, and you're pretty good at it. It may be inconsistent, but you're pretty good at it. When we start getting off on misinformation, you go, okay, wait. Do you guys remember, or you guys seem to remember, or this has happened, or no. I explained to you there were only 3.
I'm kind of reluctant to do that
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah, he
And that's
usually doesn't
because
do that.
I don't want to spoil someone who's maybe playing their character in such a way that if they're disinterested about certain things, maybe they're just going to approximate their memory.
There's been times when we've had genuine misinformation, and
Yes.
you have stepped in and said, no, you're wrong.
Yes.
Remember, this all happened.
Right.
And I think that's important to keep players on track, because a lot happens. Sometimes we just get caught up in the moments. Sometimes there's a long break, even 2 weeks
Right.
at my age
Oh,
is a long break.
It's two totally different things. If you were the actual
Yeah, well,
if you were the actual people having this adventure doing this stuff, you're gonna fucking remember that there's 3 of these big, huge, gargantuan
That's
things.
where I was
You're
going
gonna
with
know
that.
that exactly.
That's where I was going with that, and I think it's up to the GM to say to them, and at the moment, at some point, go, okay, I think you guys have wavered off of role playing and gotten into the point where you guys are actually arguing about misinformation. This and this and this and this are the facts.
See, I think it's
Now
also in the players. It's like if you actually don't remember, or if there's a disagreement about what the actual information was, then we're like, hey, what was that GM? You know, like ask for it. Because I also
I'm more comfortable with that.
Yeah, I am too as a player, because there are times like my character's leading into like weird stuff in that game in particular, like, and especially like right now, it's kind of a thing I'm exploring with a lot of my characters is that they have specific memories or things they're really good at. I've been trying to play characters that are different than myself lately. So like when I was playing in Vault 818, I play a really dumb character. Like super dumb, like really strong, really great. Don't look at me like that. It is not character type.
I'm practicing my poker face.
Yeah,
Can't you tell?
yeah, you're good at that. Keep rolling. So Stu rolled a 2
I'm
on
holding
his
a royal
poker face.
flush.
So like specifically with that character, like I do dumb things that I think are dumb but make sense for that character. So, and that happens, I think, a lot in these conversations, especially with Pooja having a very different, like her character is very cerebral, very like, what can I see? She's like an investigator. She's got all this background, and she's like, I only work with the information I know. I'm literally the opposite of that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I work with the theories, these things that I can't see. Like, so I think that really was the thing that fed into that more than like character misunderstanding.
And I don't want to speak for Pooja's character, but I have a sneaking suspicion that she's kind of, her character is the conspiracy theorist, because she's an ex-spook, you know, or not even, maybe even ex, I don't know. So she knows the double dealings and the dirty plays that goes on with corporations, and some of that stuff in your other paragraph you sort of talk about. I think a lot of that, it's up to Pooja how she's going to play it, but I've sort of felt like she has a whole distrust of corporations.
Is it a conspiracy theory if you know it's true?
Right? just because the but
Knowing is so subjective.
Yeah, right. So I think that's kind of the interesting thing, because and there's always that wiggle room. Like, again, I think it gets back to that role, and you as a player know, okay, no, Stu gave me all the information because I know this role was good. Your characters don't know that. Your characters don't know anything about how successful the roles were. All they know is their friend looked for something. Maybe their friend missed something.
Right.
So there's always like a little bit of wiggle room for doubt, which I like fucking with people and play or playing. So, yeah, I don't know.
a lot of this is a game style choice. I can understand as a listener, it can be frustrating if we're all arguing over misinformation. And at that point, I think a GM needs to step in and go, okay, you guys are arguing about non-facts. You guys each have part of it, but you haven't figured it out. And these are the facts. Remember, there are only 3 of them in the area. Remember? Okay. But sometimes we all lose sight of what was actually happening, get caught up in the moment.
Oh, sure.
And then things kind of snowball and stuff, and then later on you're like, wait a minute, I thought you said that there were only 3. Like, oh, I never said there were only 3. I said there were 3 in the area. Like, oh, what? So we can get caught up in our own role play, And the GM is also brought along with it too, and so sometimes we can forget what the actual facts are.
Right.
And that's why I think it's important for people sometimes to step up and go, "Didn't this happen?
Right.
Wait, hold on a minute. Didn't this?" And maybe when we have Sam's excessive note taking, it's wonderful to go back and go, "Oh no, it's right here. They said that."
Now, in his second example, that's an interesting question because the Exodus Foundation. Did you guys have the perception they're set up as like this safe home space?
No.
I mean, there are employers.
Right.
Right.
But so was the diplomatic corps that I was employed with before when I got thrown out. Like,
Right.
who am I going to trust?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Exactly.
I'm going to trust me.
I think specifically for this example, like I think it's really important for the GM not to come in and be like, this is the thing you're supposed to trust.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
You're right.
Yeah, because even if that is the GM's intent, which I don't know if that is your intent, like it's up to the players to decide who they trust. Sure. Like you shouldn't be coming in and being like, this is who you're meant to trust. You should trust them. It's like, okay, but like, especially our characters in this game and the way Traveler's set up, so many of us are ex-Marines and ex-diplomats and all of us have been burned by all these big organizations. Like, our characters, even if it's sort of like a trustworthy organization, we have a lot of reason to not trust any organization.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, I don't know. I feel like your character, Stork, is, like, specific with that. Like you, I think,
Sorry,
like, rolled out of more careers than any of us.
You can say every.
All the careers. All the careers.
Except that my character is...
That's a good goal for your next travel.
My character's kind of a career military dude. He just wants to have orders and he's getting free room and board and a paycheck.
Yeah.
Right.
Without having to do too much.
And a tiki bar.
And a tiki bar.
When the ship's hull doesn't get
Amazing.
breached, he's
Yeah.
over the tiki bar.
Now, when I originally made the organization, my assumption was that they're basically some do-gooders in a world that's got a lot of very apathetic, large organizations, either governments or corporations, that are more concerned with their own well-being and their own existence than they are with anything else.
But that doesn't mean they don't have an agenda.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
or
And that-
can't be corrupted or bought
Right.
off or used.
or that individuals within the organization can't be.
Exactly.
Sure.
Right.
Now, strangely, he was talking about the fact that the players were getting real suspicious about it. But in our last session, when it came to the
Spoilers.
shit, I'll be vague.
Yeah.
The shit hit the fan, and something really serious is happening. You're running home to mama.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, oh no,
Nope.
we're going to the Exodus Foundation.
GTFO.
Yep. Just above my pay grade.
Yeah.
Yep. I think everybody said that at one point.
Yeah.
Above my pay grade. We gotta...
And I wonder if Pooja had been here, if that would have happened.
I don't know.
Because she's the person who's like most suspicious about
Oh, yeah.
various kinds of organizations, and she may
For
have
good
said,
reason.
let's keep this off the radar for now until we
Yeah.
know what's going on.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting, too, because, like, the other thing that they suggest is, like, then you take it and you make it so Exodus isn't trustworthy. I don't think you have to do that as a GM.
Right.
Like, you can have the players be suspicious and have the players be wrong.
Sure.
Like, you can still run it like this is an up-and-up amazing organization, and the players can be distrusting of it, and that's an okay thing. And you don't have to then feed into it and be like, you were right the whole time.
You can yes and without changing your narrative.
Yeah.
And I could totally see how a corporation... Let's say Exodus is the equivalent of Greenpeace. And I could see how that there might be a faction or a shadow part or even just
Right.
a whole cabinet in there that might be essentially eco-terrorists.
Right.
Right? And
Or that really secretly loves whale meat.
maybe eco-terrorists or something. And,
Right.
And what they're doing is much more fringe. So you're taking your orders from the I was watching Umbrella Academy. This kind of happens.
Right.
Spoilers. You're taking your orders from Exodus as a whole, but you don't really know the agenda of the person that's giving you those orders.
Right. And the fact is, you guys have a lot of autonomy.
Yeah.
Because for them to send you a message is months away.
Yeah, clearly we don't have Ansibles.
Right. So you don't. So and you can't sit. We're gonna stay in orbit around this planet for the next 2.5 months while we send a message, and they decide what to do and then send us another message back. No, that's not what they do, and that's not why they bring in the people they bring in. It's like, no, you guys are the go-getters, and you're the ones that are gonna kick ass and take names and do whatever it is you're going to do. We're gonna provide cover for you if we need to. Hopefully we don't have to.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as whether the organization at some point might turn or something, I'm a big fan of pulling the security blanket off the player characters once they get good and comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, it is.
I also know you well enough too that you have a distrust of major corporations as a person. So I have a feeling I might sneak into your.
I have a distrust
Are
of
you
all
metagaming Stork?
all large organizations
Yeah.
and small organizations.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, when I go back to like the first D&D game I ran, you guys had the sort of mage who was one of the visors of the Duke, and he was your sort of go-to guy,
Staff.
and then
Staff.
I had him arrested.
Yeah.
You had to because we ended up. He was like our pacifier.
Yeah, he had like his little exclamation point above his head constantly.
Yeah.
That's a WoW reference for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about. That's a quest giver in
Everyone
WoW. Everyone
runs
go
back to the main city.
Hey, Bert,
goes to the
Bertha, Can
courtyard.
you help us?
We did it. Now what?
Yeah.
What's our next
What
step?
do we do now? Yeah. So, I don't know.
Stay a while and listen.
Boy.
All right. And his third example, comments on
Fascism.
military. That, I don't know. We have to talk to Stork about
Yes,
that.
Stork.
I don't know.
Yep.
The main conceit of the sort of Third Imperium Traveler setting is that you don't have faster than light communication.
Yeah.
You have to, and that kind of gives it a little bit of a feel of like the Age of Sail. What I think is really kind of one of the cool things about it. It's like science fiction pirates, which is awesome.
Very true.
Yeah.
I'm guilty because I have read Elizabeth Moon has a series called the Vata Wars, Vata Reversions, and it's very Traveler-esque. And in it, Ansibles are invented, which basically is kind of like radar in World War II. But all of a sudden, they can, we had this advantage, and it was sort of kept secret.
Right.
And I may be projecting a bit onto that into Stu's world because it's the kind of thing I think that anybody in a science fiction world would be like, we need to be able to communicate faster than light. This whole waiting for boats to arrive in the system and dumping their mail is awful. So, yeah, there may be a bunch of baggage in my head on that one.
That's what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're getting that's
That's all you get.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, and,
you go to war with the postal service you have, not the postal service you wish you had.
There you
Right?
go.
yeah, that's true. I'm sure there's people working on it somewhere in the system, but I think that's one of my favorite things about it too. And I think it's also why a lot of us have really enjoyed playing games like in the 90s, the 80s, and like earlier now. Like I'm loving my Wild West game right now because,
Yeah.
like good luck. Like there's no cell phones like we did in Moat all the time.
Yeah.
Go, pony, go.
Yeah. I'm gonna
Right.
Google that on my phone right now. I'm sorry. We're in a sub right now, but it's fine. Like, get all the information you want. Text somebody. There's gonna be a strike force waiting for us on the beach. It's like, well, god damn it. Like, there's some frustrations with playing in settings where you have super easy communication.
Oh, sure.
And I think this is a great solve for that compared to us, a comparatively high-tech society that still has like a very realistic limitation on it that really, I don't know, enriches the world to me. Or
Are you
I
going to
guess
make all your
universe.
players memorize the Morse code?
Oh, I make my fourth graders do that. I don't make them memorize it, but they have the best time later when we're studying like California history and stuff. They do I'm a dork. I'm sorry. Yeah, they write out letters and they have to translate. It's like their favorite thing to do all year is drawing all the stupid little dots and dashes. Their favorite thing, and they have to hand it to a friend and decode it. They love it. Sorry, I got off track.
I learned semaphore in Boy Scouts. It was awesome.
Yeah. My grandfather, to the day he died, he was a
Signalman?
he was a radio man in World War II. He could do Morse code. Okay, but he could do Morse code in his head like his whole life. We'd go places. We'd be, okay, do that one. Like point at signs, and he'd do them for us. It was very entertaining.
I had an art teacher in college who was the same thing. He was a radar guy on like a bomber, and occasionally he'd just walk around going da 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 da. He had this little bit da 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 dash da.
Yeah.
Da, da, da.
Yeah.
And I looked at him one day and said, "Are you telling me to fuck off?" And he kind of looked and he walked away.
Amazing. Hey, that was a good email.
All right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think generally, just to sort of sum up, I think my philosophy is I'd rather let the players have their wrong knowledge until someone asks me.
Yeah.
I'd rather, like, if they get in an argument about something and someone looks at me and says, okay, wait, we had a roll last week. Were there 2 of them or 3 of them? There were 3 of them. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Oh! But I'm going to wait until I get asked. I don't want to interject, especially when it's character-to-character interactions.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we fall out of character and arguing out of character about the information, that's different.
Yeah.
But we were very in character, very like it was like an kind of embattled like conversation.
Right.
But also like those can be like really fun, especially with someone that I know as well as Pooja. Like Stork and I have had some of those that are super entertaining, and they do add like a layer to the narrative, because that made like when we made up later, spoiler, sorry, like now there's like another layer of trust, because like we know we both are going to fight for what we believe in, and there's like a bonding thing that can happen between characters there. So
I kind of disagree, actually. I think about players arguing over misremembered facts, not on purpose, is really counterintuitive. It's like we could spend a lot more time gaming rather than arguing over the fact that something that happened 2 weeks ago got misremembered.
Right, but that's not what happened here, and that's what I'm saying.
Sometimes it has happened, though. But yes, I guess in your specific example, you're right. It's a matter, though, of the GM stepping in and going, no, you're remembering this wrong. Because otherwise, you're going to spend an hour and a half arguing about stuff that didn't actually happen, and it's wasting game time.
I guess my concern is there are players who like my character has an IQ of 8.
Yeah.
No, there were 2. And
Yeah.
maybe they're doing it on purpose. And I don't want to put them in the place where they have to break characters. Says, no, I know there were 3, but my character's dumb.
But I feel like at that point, that character has done things in that vein already. You know to expect that from that character. I think if it's something that is new and clearly a miscommunication, that you might want to correct, especially if it's going to cause just wheel spinning for the next 3 hours.
Exactly. I'm of the mind that I would step in sooner rather than later and say, is this a character choice? And they go, what do you mean? Okay, because you are misrepresenting the facts completely. I am? All right. We need to have a come to Jesus moment here. Here's what happened. Because otherwise, it's a waste of everybody's time.
Is it though? I mean, if it's interesting character interaction and it adds to the story.
Well, as long as it's moving the plot, or not the plot, the story forward, then it's fine. But the minute you cross that line into just wheel spinning and 3 hours of arguing, because I've been at those tables, then it's exhausting for everybody involved.
Yeah, I guess at that point is when you'd like use the X card if you were one of the other people at the table. If you weren't interested in it, you're like, hey guys, like this is getting old for me. Like, if this is in character, fine. If it's not, maybe we need to take a break and like step away from the table for a second. Because I think some people really enjoy that dynamic, and if some people don't, then that's an important thing to know when you're sitting down at the table too.
I don't like it when mom and dad fought at home. I don't want to come to play the game when mom and dad fight too.
Yeah, but you also have at times been in a character where it was important to fight over things for you. So it's not necessarily like it can be hard for people at the table. I think, to be 100% honest, I think there's a thing when 2 women fight that people are more uncomfortable with. So I think sometimes like Pooja and I could is more upsetting for some people than some like 2 men arguing over like the tactics of something. I don't know. I hope that's not our listener base.
Right.
But I mean, that's definitely a thing that's true. There's statistics on that in media and like across the board and things like that. So I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing.
And I actually think it's more awkward if it's a man and a woman arguing, because then it gets. I don't know.
Well, then only one's right.
And we're moving on.
All right.
Yeah. Especially if I'm in the argument, it's always me.
So thank you, Steve from SoCal, for the email.
Yeah,
hopefully
that was
the
a good
answer to
discussion.
everything. That was.
Yeah.
And I threw it in because I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I find this cogent.
It makes me really think about my GMing style. I'm going to respectfully disagree with Stu because I'm going to step in a moment. So, but
Yeah. Interesting.
Reason
But
300.
I now know it's Stu's games to ask more questions.
Right. Reason 346, an anti-D&D email from Johnny, who would like to read this.
No.
I will read this.
Go ahead.
Because I have feelings.
Oh God. Okay.
All the feels.
Reason number 346: D&D is total horseshit. Classes. Is there any way a game could better shit over my cool character idea than the way D&D does classes?
That's a t-shirt.
Yeah, probably. But for the purpose of shitting on D&D, I'm going to blindly assume not. It's like the characters the creators don't trust the intelligence of their players to make functional characters. Which, now that I think about that, is probably fair.
Yeah, it is. It is. Play GURP someday and you're like, realize about like 6 months in, you're like, I can't do anything. I've completely built this character wrong.
I mean,
So-
a 200-point accountant.
Yeah. I'm
So-
a beta generalist.
I mean, he
do
can math
anything
the
well.
shit out of stuff, but I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's okay. So they have to railroad them into very specific versions of the class. Want your character to grow and change as you play through the story? D&D tells you to fuck off and play some hippie game. Gotta get your character into our definition of the classes. Otherwise, the MMOers will get scared and confused.
I'm a healer. It's what I do. It's all I know how to do. Don't make me fight.
We are very easily confused. Yeah. But don't worry. Every once in a while, we'll let you pick a feat that will allow you to maybe do one of the many cool things you probably want to do. But what about multi-classing? I hear you half-heartedly cry.
Yay.
What about multi-classing?
And there was much rejoicing. And they most certainly would have died had they not eaten Sir Robert's minstrels.
Yes. So long as you're cool with being totally ineffective compared to the rest of your party, go right ahead.
That's me.
Because we
Yeah, but you
all
don't
know.
multi-class.
Bard.
Yes. He's a bard. He multi-classes into different instruments as a bard, so he's not as good at
Multi-instrumental.
Yes.
Brass, woodwind, string.
No, I play the bass and the drum.
Great.
So
That's funny.
So you're multi-classing in musician and what else for the drum?
Yeah. Couch surfing.
Even that can be argued. Oh, so you're multi-classing into two dumb things?
Yeah. So long as you're cool with being told. Oh, I read that part already. Basically, we all know that every great game makes you choose between playing the character you want to play and playing a character that can actually do stuff. I guess I should ask a question. Do you prefer games with classes or games that give you the freedom to truly make your own character? Yours, in mutual disdain for D&D, Johnny. P.S. Don't worry. I know you'll say some nice stuff about D&D to placate the masses.
Oh, wow.
PPPS. Or PPS. Drink. PPPS. With Tangy Day.
Dude, that was last month.
I think this email is probably.
Okay.
It might be.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
My first question is, who hurt you?
Obviously a DM.
Show me on the D20 where D&D hurt you.
Oh, man.
Because
That's easy for Stork.
this tone is
Yeah.
very pointed.
Yeah, I can show you.
I guess my first question to you would be, what kind of character do you want to play? Because D&D, yeah, they're archetypes, and you can build your character on fluff and story. Oh, don't give me that. You can do it. It's possible, especially if you go into the splat book, especially if you want to go delve into the hell that is 3.5. There's every kind of wizard and spellcaster you could ever want in 3.5. In the millions of splat books, you can find what you're looking for. It's already built for you.
Which begs the question, why not just build it yourself?
So, what do I do if I'm not playing 3.5? What do I do if I'm playing 5th edition?
Fifth
And there's
edition?
no splat books.
That's great. Mazel tov. I'm happy for you. You made a good choice.
But there's no splat books.
You don't need splat books. Just reflavor it. What is like? Give me an example of a character you want to build. And
I don't know. My head space is really out of like fantasy right now
well,
because I'm not even like in that space right now because I'm not running anything like that.
right.
Off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything. But
I want to play
I mean,
a
how about
barbarian paladin. He is a barbarian, and yet he's been touched by his god to be the paladin.
how about a mage that wears plate mail
Yeah.
and
That's-
carries a sword like Gandalf?
Well, you have the Eldritch Knight
And
from
they're
the
mages?
Wizard.
Is that in 5? Or
That's in 5.
Okay.
Yeah, and you would have to take a feat to wear plate mail.
That's what he says.
But you don't get when do you get feats at 5th.
You can, depending on your race, you can get a feat at first level.
Oh, see,
They-
you're so restricted.
But don't
Yeah.
worry, every once in a while we'll let you pick a feat that will allow you to maybe do one of the many cool things you probably
Right.
want to do.
See, I generally prefer games where there aren't archetypes built in that people can make the characters they want. That's I cut my teeth on GURPS. You can make whatever you want. Here's the character books. Go. It may take you time because you're
Right.
going to have to start from the ground up, and you better have a concept when you start out.
Yeah.
If you don't have a concept and you're just paging through the book, you're going to be there for weeks.
And I think that's the real point. Is that you want to play your concept, and sometimes in D&D, your concept
Right.
doesn't fit well within any one class.
And I think in certain genres too, I think that there's a lot of superiority to systems that don't have classes. Hero, with its many foibles, when it comes to building a superhero, there is not a more
great.
flexible system.
It's awesome. You can knock people through
Wild
walls.
Talents is pretty flexible.
Yeah.
But that's on the verge of
Same
being
thing
a
with
hippie
Mutants
game.
and Masterminds.
It's not.
Yeah, it is.
It's super crunchy. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
it's incredibly country.
There's a lot of math in Wild Talents.
That-
If you
you heard
pick-
me.
if you
And a little
build
bit of
your-
rock and roll.
If you build your character off the menu, like you can skip some of the math, but you can create powers
Hippie games
from
can be
scratch.
crunchy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's not
By,
get into this one.
by hippie games, it's like there are in Hero for different kinds of powers. There's many different sort of die roll mechanics that can be applied to different powers depending on what those powers do.
Right.
So, like if it's a fire power, it's going to be all killing damage. Or if it's a an energy blast, maybe it's going to be a lot of stun and just a
Shock
little.
damage.
Right.
Like in Wild Talents.
Right.
So there's shock and killing damage.
The ability to increase.
I'll run Wild Talents for you. sometime.
The ability to just increase your density by 1,000%.
Yeah, that's in the Wild Talents.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
All
Same
right.
thing in Mutants and Masterminds. It's a blank slate.
Yeah, I run it with a very hippie game flavor,
but the game relies almost exclusively on narrative to do those things, though, right?
it doesn't have to. I run it in a very narrative fashion. But no, you roll the dice, and like there's very specific like things to do if you want to, and that there's limits to how much you can expand yourself, and you have to roll certain amounts to do that sometimes.
Right.
I could attest to that. I played it in Kimmy's Wild Talent game, and I failed my roll, and I couldn't do anything.
Right.
As narrative as she is,
Yeah.
I still fucked up.
But I mean, but
Your power doesn't work. Your power doesn't work.
No, I've only read the book.
Yeah,
I've never played it.
it's okay.
But it seems like you are relying a lot on narrative for the minute differences between types of powers.
It can be. It can also be run.
I mean, it's the same complaint I have about Savage Worlds. It's Savage Worlds. I'm a fire mage. I'm a water mage. I'm an air mage. I'm an earth mage. I'm going to shoot my chosen element at someone and attack them with it. Oh, that's the blast. And it doesn't matter what the fuck you are. It could be a psychic blast. It could be any kind of blast. Here are the game mechanics for the blast. That's not how Hero works.
Oh, well,
Hero has whole different like realms of ways that you can attack people. Whether you're attacking them physically or you're attacking them psychically. There's different people have different defenses and things to those sorts of things. There's different sorts of armor. There's hardened armor and there's levels of hardened armor. So you can make characters that are nearly indestructible.
I'm not saying that Wild Talents is as crunchy as Hero.
Right.
'Cause
Well, it's not.
There's
it's
not.
not.
No, I get it.
You can.
Like,
I think you can have a lot of that stuff without all the crunchiness.
As specific is a better way of saying it. Wild Talents has like the way electricity harms you is different than the way fire harms you, and that's different than the way if someone like shoots you with a laser beam harms you. So
Right.
all these things have different damage on you. Like one of my favorite things about it is electricity actually grounds. So if you get shot in the arm with electricity, it damages all the way down into your foot into the ground.
Right.
So there's lots of cool like variations like that. Heroes definitely.
So there's actually specific rules on the different kinds of damage and what
Yeah.
what specifically happens to you numbers wise.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right.
Just ask poor Starbuck.
Oh man,
But
we had to look up burn damage in that first game.
Right.
Man, that
That
was
was nasty.
harsh. We were like, Samantha's like, oh yeah, I just throw some alcohol on him and set him on fire. We're like, oh, okay, all right, page 84. Oh,
No.
yeah, he doesn't. He's not anymore. Like,
She made
he's
it weird.
dead. Yeah, she made it weird, like
But
fast.
this isn't really supposed to be about
No.
Well, no,
Hero
but
and
I guess so you bring up a good
But he's
point.
asking about whether you prefer classes or to
Well,
make your own.
You bring up a
concept.
good point as far as Hero having different dice you roll depending on psionic or like how important is that to you versus the story you're telling? Like if you're playing a psionic wizard, or sure, let's go with a psionic blast wizard. How important is it to have a different mechanic than just reflavoring Witch Bolt to be a psionic blast?
Yeah.
I think it depends on what the mechanics are like. Because in some games, you are going to have to change the way things work.
Right.
You can't just say, okay, blast in this instance is fire. Well, a fire blast should be maybe worse than a water blast. Right? It's not, you can't just reflavor it. You need to change it. It needs to be modified.
I don't know.
Actually, yeah, it does. I mean, unless you're playing a game that is just pure narrative, where the rules are just basically there to sort of guide the narrative and not provide any actual, like, conflict resolution, then sure. But but that's a minority of games at this point.
But who's to say that a fire blast would do 3d6 points of damage because it's fire, and say a water blast, which is basically a stream, like a jet stream of water, like pummeling you, couldn't also do 3d6 points of damage?
It could, but the amount of force going into making that happen is considerably more to move water at the
But
point
it's
where it's going to
magic.
hurt you as much. Sure, it's magic, but what is the underlying physics behind the magic, and where is your limit to your power? Because if you can summon this much water, why not just summon that much fire and make the fire one better?
Don't they slice granite with like water jets?
They can, sure, absolutely.
I still we're wandering off of the whole class thing, like because
I don't think we are. This is exactly because I don't like classes, and
I
he
understand.
does.
but my conceit is that sometimes it's kind of fun having a boundary to play around in. If I'm gonna make a barbarian or Conan, let's say, I could maybe I'll make my Conan the librarian. He's a very educated barbarian, and it's kind of fun sometimes to play around within that little bubble
Right.
that you are given.
But the problem with that is if you give your Conan the librarian a higher intelligence
And wisdom.
and wisdom, like he ends up being less effective
and
as a
ineffective.
barbarian. So
Now-
that's what he's talking
And that's
about.
where I was going with
Yeah.
that, which is he says, well, do you think we're too stupid to make a character that wouldn't be good? Yeah, I am. I will make a generalist every time. I'm notorious at it, and I
And
end
the
up with characters that are not very
You
effective.
can't
at
make
anything.
generalists. And if you make generalists in a class game like D&D, you will make an ineffective character.
Unless you play a ranger, which I do all the time, and they're generalists.
Well, that's kind of the generalist class.
yes.
But my point is, you can make a generalist in GURPS or something like that and still be effective.
Yeah, I mean,
You're still not going to be as good at the individual things as the specialists are, but you're going to be generally be more effective than you are going to be making a multi-class fighter cleric mage.
Yeah, like Traveler's a great example. Like where all of us are like okay in a lot of things, and we barely survive, but we're pretty effective for the setting.
Well, the other difference is in modern settings and in science fiction settings, you have the advantage of technology.
Yeah, but you have
put
magic in D&D.
You put a rifle in someone's hand, they're more effective than
right.
there would be otherwise.
Right, unless you like have fireball and then you
Right.
like fuck with everything. I think my thing with, and I am very comfortable with D&D because I'm one of the MMO players that you talk about. Like to this day, I've been playing MMOs for way longer than I want to admit, like almost 2 decades. But you know, so that there's that comfort level of stepping into something. But I think with D&D, it's like that talent tree thing, which. And, you know, when somebody's programmed a world and there's only so many possibilities, it's like that's easier for me to accept in that environment. Like, okay, cool, I have leveled up, and now, here are my 3 things I can pick on my talent tree. I get 1+1 to strength or dex or my mana. Okay, these are my choices. Fine. They have a finite, you know, number of resources that they can donate to every person.
Right.
When I'm on 4 people at a table, like I want to be able to go out of that talent tree, and I've loved our D&D games. Like some of my favorite characters I've ever played are actually in D&D. But I always find it's in spite of the classes rather than because of the classes.
That's a very good statement right there.
For me, the way I build a D&D character is I come up with my concept first. I figure out who they are, what kind of character I want to play, and then from there, look at the classes and build the character out of the classes. That just makes the most sense to me. That's the way I build characters, and that's the way it just, I've done it for years. I think that's why sometimes I struggle building characters in things like Wild Talents or big, like, I have decision paralysis.
So many options.
It's too many options.
Well, that's what you definitely have to have a very clear character concept.
Well, I had a pretty clear character concept for Wild Talents, and even then I was like, I don't know what points go where.
And
Like,
now that's just system unfamiliarity.
well, yeah, but a little bit, but also just it was decision paralysis. It was like I don't know how many points I want to put in the powers, how many points I want to put in abilities and skills. It was a lot. So thank you, Jason, if you're watching. You are a lifesaver. Yeah.
They're like, Kimmy, how can you only play MMO for 2 decades when you're only 21? You're my favorite, Master Vitter. Thank you. You're my favorite.
But no, I think
Keep lying. Keep lying to me.
you use the class as a base, and then build the flavor around it.
Right.
It's that, I mean, and what I love about 5.0 is that it encourages that with your background and
yeah.
the different options you have for each class. It's not like it was in 3.0 or even 1, where you're a fighter, you take your turn, you hack and slash, and that's all you do.
Sure.
You have options now. You can differentiate and get more specific, which I really like.
Yeah, they've definitely
they're
taken that
basically
feedback.
moving towards a less class.
Well, not less
System.
class, but more diversified.
Flexible classes.
Yes, mhm.
Yes.
And I could certainly see.
But then why not just let go
Yeah,
of the classes
just let go.
altogether and
Because
just
they
let you
have-
make the character you want?
Let
They
it
have-
go, Indiana.
Yeah, because there's people who are very comfortable with that, like with that talent tree thing. Like that's a flavor, and like they have
Sure.
they have like the biggest property in gaming.
Yeah.
Like it's huge.
Doesn't
So-
mean it's the best.
No, absolutely. But I think that's why they're reticent to that, like completely abandon what is
Sure.
familiar and what has made them a shit fucking ton of money,
Mm-hmm.
and continues to make more and more money as the hobby is expanding lately, thanks to streaming and podcasts and all these things. So I don't know. Like I can see why they don't want to get rid of it completely. It does bother me that there's almost like a little bit of a paywall for it, to be honest. Like, you have to buy these splat books and stuff to be able to
Well, there aren't-
multi-class out or whatever.
Correct me if
the way
I'm
you
wrong.
want.
There are no splat.
There are a couple. There's
Books where they have classes in them.
yeah.
I thought so.
That WotC published.
Starting to trickle out.
Yeah, Unearthed Arcana, Sword Coast Adventures.
Oh, there's actually new classes in those. Okay, I wasn't aware of
Yeah, I
that.
don't know if Ravinica does. I don't know if that one. I haven't.
I think Xanathar's guide has a couple classes in it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's cool. Like, they've done that. Like the Eberron stuff has brought in a bunch of that. That's not necessarily specific to 5e, but like they bring in cool different flavors and different things. But it's all like it's like you have to. Like, I buy the game. It's like it's the same thing I get annoyed with MMOs. To be completely honest, it's like I bought this game. I'm paying my monthly subscription
Oh,
or
but if
whatever.
I want to go past this mountain range, I have to go
I
buy
have to
another
go
game.
pay another game. So it's like, okay, like they very much like, I mean, MMOs were modeled on D&D, and that legacy is very, very, very clear.
Yeah, but it's also not restricted to just D&D. If you look at Fantasy Flight,
Yes, 100%.
Star Wars, all the different eras have different classes. and
Because
different-
they're all based on D&D too.
Some of the it's a double-edged sword with classes, because sometimes, I'm going to generalize here, sometimes maybe within a less creative group, the paladin is always a self-righteous dick, the elf is always a dwarf-hating snob,
Right.
the mage is always mysterious and doesn't share. You end up with these tropes over and over and over again, because that's all people know how to play, and that's because that's what they see in that class. They figure there's 3 choices within each class. Maybe I'm generalizing here. I'm just bear with me. And I can see how that people just default to these tropes, and you're missing out on what could be a really interesting character development thing if you have a more open-ended game system where you're allowed to just pick and choose because it fits the way your character goes. I think it's fine, because in many ways it keeps people focused. You know, Lord knows there's enough AD&D in the world that AD&D.
ADD.
Yeah.
Maybe it is ADD in reference to D&D.
I caught myself.
Attention deficit and disorder.
And disorder.
Attention deficit
And
and
dragons.
dragons disorder. Yeah.
Oh my god, that is so. As someone who has that, like, that is applicable.
And in many places, I could see how classes can be really important, and I get the same problem that you do, which is, look at all these cool things I could do. I want to do them all.
Yeah.
And in the interest sometimes of just getting the game going, have some classes. Pick one. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
The real great worm in the chat room wants to point out, he's like, no new classes, just
Oh,
new class options
Yeah.
so far.
I realized after I said
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
The Artificer will be the first real new class, and they're still tinkering with it. So they are looking to add more classes.
Because, I mean, when 4th edition, there were like 2 or 3 players' handbooks with
Yeah.
like 5 or 6 classes each and races.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the amount of choices that existed for characters started to get big enough where it's like, at some point, it almost stops being a class system because there's just so many of them.
Well, it ran into the 3.5 issue where there were so many splat books.
And
Like,
8,000
yeah, like
feats.
why do I need a difference between a geomancer and, like, just reflavor it? Reflavor it. It's okay to reflavor it. It's not law.
4.0 had the same thing too.
But see, if you're playing a different kind of class, you want to have different stuff.
Not necessarily.
Well, but then why have different classes?
Well, because there's a lot of people out there that are absolute rule followers, and they
Right.
want to make sure that that's within
But
the
if you, I mean,
boundaries.
if you make a cleric or a mage, and they both have magic, you want their magic to be different,
Yeah.
Well, yes.
right? You want the
I think
mage.
some people
But
care. But yeah, I do, and you do.
An example would be, why do we need both a fighter class and a samurai class? Why can't your fighter be a samurai.
Because samurais use katanas and they're magic.
Yeah.
They can cut through.
They have different rules, man.
Every-
We can't just reflavor a longsword.
No,
to a katana.
no,
no.
katanas.
Now you're breaking it because katanas kill
Superior
everything.
weapon.
Oh, yeah.
Rumpf.
Yeah. We should move on.
We're fucking with you.
I know.
But we love you, Joey.
But some people,
But yes.
but
It's fine.
I mean, we're
if
using
you don't
that-
want to be wrong, that's fine.
we're using that as an example because some people really do think that way, and
Yeah.
it's really funny. The rule followers, they're like, but you can't do that. You're a mage. You can't actually use a sword. No,
like, I mean-
you're breaking the rules.
Here, for instance, I just thought if I wanted to make a character, it's like I'm going to make an elemental mage. All he does is earth and fire. Let's say that's all he does: earth and fire. Can I make that in
Yeah,
D&D?
absolutely you
And
can.
I'm going to be able to pick all the spells I want.
You might have to work with your DM and reflavor some
Yeah.
spells.
Oh, we're going
So
to
you
have to rewrite the spell book.
practice it.
Not rewrite the spell book.
Homebrew, Stu. That's the term.
Oh,
Right.
so web isn't web. It's actually roots now. Ugh.
Right.
Well, there's also spells that are already like that. Entangling Vine.
Yeah.
that is.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. So.
Earth, wind, and fire. All right. Get it. Thank you very much there, Johnny.
Yeah.
Happy
We can
with
go on
thank
with
you.
that. That might actually be
Yeah.
a topic. That's an interesting
That's a
thing.
long one, yeah.
I will
like
talk.
that.
I will die on that hill.
I like that.
Getting players to learn the rules from Craig.
Oops.
Stork should not read that email.
Nope.
I'll read it.
Stork does not have
No, I can read
standing.
it. I
I
just
say
won't
it
comment
lovingly.
on it. No, you don't.
Yes.
It's a good point. I should probably learn the rules.
Greetings, crew. A quick question for discussion that I'll keep brief because otherwise it'll turn into a rant. How do you get players to actually learn the system, what their characters' abilities are? I'm running a D&D 5e game for a group of new players, and I'm doing my best to encourage good habits, but it feels like I'm hitting a brick wall with getting them to write down what their character can actually do. I realize as new players there's a lot to learn, but suggesting put together a page listing your racial class abilities and me putting a cheat sheet onto the front panel of my GM screen doesn't seem to be doing the trick.
Well, actually, I'm out of ideas because that's all I
Right.
would have said.
Given I've commented on players in the Happy Jacks APs not being able to remember basic roles, is it just me? Am I being that guy, or is it reasonable to expect players to learn at least the basic mechanics? Craig, Voodoo.
You're not being unreasonable.
No,
Yeah,
I don't
no.
think so at all. I mean, the sheet you were describing is their character sheet.
Mm-hmm.
It should be there.
Yeah.
Or if you need extra information, because I know when I guessed it on Dragon Heist,
Mm-hmm.
I had a cheat sheet with all my spells broken down on it, so I had to
Right.
flip through the book. Like,
Yeah. I did the same thing when I was playing Shigenja in L5R. I printed out each individual spell because those things are like 3 paragraphs long.
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
And I did the
it's a
same
wordy
thing.
fucking
Yeah,
book.
I'll usually do that. I'll make my own little spell book for if I'm playing a caster, so I don't have to
Right.
flip through the pages and, what does that mean? And abbreviate where I need to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else you can do. Like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him learn the rules.
I think you could lead a horticulture,
Whoa.
but you can't make them think.
I'm sorry. Some of the smartest women I know have worked in the
Look,
sex industry. I'm just going to say.
I'm just going to say that was Dorothy Parker, by the way,
Okay.
not me.
I don't know who that is, but
She was one of the wittiest women.
Someone
that
who was
ever
alive before you were born.
Oh,
Go type in.
I'm only 21, guys. Master Bitter said it in the chat room.
Me too, Kimmy. Me too.
Me too. Yeah. You love you,
Go
Master
look up
Bitter.
Dorothy Parker. She had a very interesting life. And I completely derailed what I was going to say,
okay.
which probably was just going to be pedantic anyway.
I mean, like it's hard sometimes for me because generally we play so many systems at a time, and you'd think it was super easy, but at the end of the day, after you've been at a full day of work and and suddenly you're like trying to do all these other things and people are watching you, it's really easy to kind of go blank on something even if you've done it a million times. So I feel like we're not necessarily the best study example of
And
players should know rules.
And full confession, clearly these things fall out of my head these days and Bill called us out privately when we were doing our Traveler game. I didn't bother to look at the rules. I've run Traveler. I've played Traveler a lot. I figured out I'll just character gen. I got this down, and I was shocked at how much I had forgotten
You got wrong,
and
yeah.
flubbed. And Pooja, who was brand new to it, was like actuallying us, and it was embarrassing.
She's so good at the
but
mechanics
also
of everything.
just it was an eye opener to me. Like maybe I should, dust this off. It's the
She has
equivalent
a
of
young
singing.
brain that can still absorb information. It's not
She's
bouncing off
21
yet.
too.
Right?
We're all
Bouncing
21
off.
except Stork.
It's the equivalent of like writing a song, but you haven't done it in 5 years. You're like, oh, I wrote this. I know how to do it. And then suddenly the song comes up. You're like, oh my god, I don't
know what
remember.
you're talking about.
I have no idea what the words are. Like, how do you not know the words? You wrote this. And I think it behooves all of us to think about that.
Yeah.
Because especially, as you say, we're playing all these different rules sets, and sometimes they
And if you're only
forget.
playing sporadically, like even playing every other week, I think I finally got a hold of the rules for Savage Worlds and Spanish Ghost, the final episode. I know
Yeah.
there's one or two rolls still. I'm like, so what am I rolling? Like it's it's tough, especially if you're built in a system, like if you know a system really well and you're trying to branch out.
Right.
You're kind of working counterintuitive to what you're used to.
Well, and if you feel like people are watching, like I've done it before where I think I know a rule and I just go with it rather than asking, and like people call you out later. So sometimes if I'm even just a little unsure, like it says this on my character sheet, like I'm still gonna ask just in case,
Right.
Because I'd rather ask and do it the correct way than just go with it and like do it wrong.
Exactly.
And you don't want to stop character gen for 20 minutes looking up
No.
one paragraph in a
And
5-hour
and
book.
I don't like stopping games to look up rules
Right.
unless it's a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
It's like figure out what you want to do, and we'll just kind of
But it's
half-ass
still-
it for now, and then figure it out after the.
It still would behoove the characters to know the rules so that every
Players.
time it comes to their turn, they're like, no, what do I do?
Right.
Yeah.
I
And,
mean-
like sit down with them and tell them, like, hey, as your GM, this is getting frustrating to me. Like, I keep, I've done this for you. I've done this for you. At this point, it just seems like you're not caring, and like have that conversation with them. Like, some of them might be like, look, I have ADD, and it's super
Right.
hard sometimes for me to remember minute details. I can tell you the backstory of Middle Earth, but I can't remember
In Elvish.
In Elvish, not anymore.
you know
I
what?
used to be able to do it in Elvish, but
He needs to cut them some slack because these are brand new players.
yeah, that's the other
And the thing is, can you imagine grabbing the player's handbook, having never played a role-playing game in your life, having never been exposed to it before?
That's fair.
You pick the book up and you start reading through it. You don't even know what you're reading and what you're looking at. I mean, with us, it's like, oh, I need to know how the combat system works. Index, combat system. You know because
There's
you've played
buzzwords.
so many games before.
Armor.
What to look? I need to see how armor works, or I need to see how damage works, or what's my roll to hit, and stuff like that. And you know that there's basic things that exist in every role playing game that we know. We may not know the specifics of the mechanic, but we just can use the book as a reference
Yeah.
and say, oh yeah, in this game you're going to roll a d20 and you have a target number of this, right? Or you're going to need to
Those
roll.
words right there are endemic to the game thing. Now, if somebody who's never gamed before doesn't know what target number is,
And that's
doesn't-
going to sound like
doesn't know-
gibberish to them.
Yeah,
It's like,
and
no,
it is.
this is a d10 dice pool. You
What-
can add your
what?
stat and your skill.
Yeah.
Huh?
well, I can't be any more clear.
Right. So what are you going to do? You're going to hand them like that 500-page vampire book and say, "Well, just come on, learn the rules." I mean,
That's
it's
true.
tough. It's tough. I think at this point they're overwhelmed with the idea of even creating a cheat sheet for their character
Absolutely.
because they're not really sure what they're looking at. And maybe he should sit down with them one-on-one and say, "I'm going to help you make here's what your character can do.
Yeah.
Here's because they don't call them feats. They have other things that character classes have in 5th edition. You know what I'm
I know,
talking about.
yeah.
It's like certain
Class abilities. And-
class abilities, right? So it's like here's your class abilities. Write all these down. This is what these words mean in this context of role-playing games. And then if you've got a spellcaster, here's the spells you have. Let's make a photocopy or print out a PDF. D&D and PDFs, but print out or photocopy and cut and paste the text for each of the spells so you can look at them because they may be too overwhelmed to even be able to make the cheat sheet,
You know,
especially new players.
when I
That's-
do,
Yeah.
when I do Savage Worlds at the cons, I have a player mat that I found on the internet.
Right.
And it basically gives you all the dice, and it gives you a quick listing. And oftentimes, I did that because there's people that have never played the system, maybe less so now, but at the time.
Right.
And when they would ask, I
I
don't know
still
what to
use
do.
that. Like, I've played the system
Right.
many times, and I still use that mat every
And so,
time I play.
So what I would say is, they're like, well, what do I do? It's like, well, it's on your mat. Oh, and remind them, and then eventually they get in the habit of looking at it, and then all those words will eventually start making sense. It's depending on the system. I mean, I think I made player mats for L5R, and it's a little more complicated. There was a lot of gobbledygook there, but trying to find those player aids so it's right there in front of them, and they have no excuse not to look at it, and then reminding them to look at it.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the
At some
key.
point, you take the training wheels off and say, we've gone through combat a couple of times. It's all right there on that player mat. So look at it and tell me how you want to do this.
Yeah.
And then, little tough love, and I think they'll pick it up. But you need to give them the tools, because you're absolutely right. We take for granted, we don't even know that we're saying things that nobody would know about. It is gobbledygook.
I mean, I didn't even start making cheat sheets for games until I'd been playing role-playing games for probably 10 or 15 years. Because, I mean, if you handed me GURPS in 1985 or whenever it is I first picked up the system, I wouldn't have been able to do a cheat sheet because we were playing half the shit wrong anyway.
Right.
And I mean, it's like,
And
I'm
you don't
sitting
know
there
what's
reading
important.
like, oh, we've been doing damage wrong.
And you don't know what's important. You're like, well, I should probably put in a personality attacks, and I should
Right.
probably put in psyche attacks, and I should probably put in, and then you end up with a sheet that's 8 pages long. That's not a cheat
The
sheet.
more different games that you've played, there's almost a skill to learning systems, and
Yes.
and that takes a long time to do. I mean, now I can go through a game and skim through it and get a fairly reasonable idea how the game mechanics are going to work. An unfamiliar game,
Yeah.
but I mean, if it's organized well, there have been books where it's like, I need to know how damage works. Okay, I've looked at every page. I can't find where damage is. It's in here. It has to be here somewhere.
Traveler 5.
Oh my god! But yeah, I mean, Traveler 5 is almost like it's like a game that's designed for people who are used to playing a different game every week.
Or just people that are completely caught up in the buzzwords of games, because it is just chock full of all of that. It's a dense gamer book for gamers. It's a gamer book written by a gamer for gamers.
But not really for gamers.
I know for me, I can read a book left, right, sideways, up, and and I'll get a brief concept of the game, but until I actually sit at the table, roll the dice, I need that. I'm a kinetic learner. I need to actually see it in action.
Yeah, me too.
So maybe something that you can do for your players, if they're still new, is run a couple scrimmages with them. Small, mini sessions where they get familiar with the game, they get familiar with their character, which is also the reason why I don't like starting D&D at 10th level off the bat. Because they have this level 10 character, I don't know how any of these spells work, and I don't know how.
And you're going to forget which feats you have that might affect things.
Yeah. So that's why I will do it, but I don't really care for it.
Yeah.
I
do the same thing with Wild Talents. I don't even bother to tell people how combat works until we get into our first basic combat or contested role.
And it's so different than every other role-playing game's combat system.
Yeah.
Wild Talents is a perfect
You
example.
have to show it.
Yeah, you have to show it.
You had a point.
No, I'm just saying, do small scrimmages, do little mini sessions with them, so they can get familiar with their character, familiar with the rules, and then even if it has to be completely outside your story arc, just take one of your sessions and have them do that, and it might help them learn it better.
Remember in EverQuest, I spent a lot of time killing rats.
Yeah.
Right.
Just so I could learn how to how the interface works.
Absolutely.
And that's really kind of what it is. It's you need to give your players a chance to learn how the interface works.
Yeah, low stakes stuff.
Yeah.
When we can learn how the game's going to work. Have them fight. Yeah, have them fight giant rats.
Yeah, and you have to, and again, I'm going to bring in teacher stuff, and as something that I said earlier, if people are asking questions, you don't assume it's laziness.
Right.
It's them wanting to get it right and see the good intent with that, and just try and be patient with that. And people are asking for you to post on the forum or something, or Stork your Savage Rolls thing and stuff, and your L5R thing.
I'll find it again.
Because those are super helpful tools. But as frustrating as it gets,
Here's the opposite
Remind
end of
yourself.
that too, which is sometimes people are afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
And so you don't assume that they understand what's going on because they're not
They're
asking.
not asking. Absolutely.
A lot of times people are embarrassed to raise their hand and say, I don't know, I know we've done combat 10 times and I still don't understand it.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to ask you that.
Hoodoo's been around for a long time. And
that's
he's been
true.
a gamer for a long time, presumably, and has played probably a lot of different systems.
No, they're 21.
Right. But has gotten
Forever
to
21.
gotten to the point where it's routine to learn a new game.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of step back from that and realize if you're dealing with brand new players who've never played a role-playing game before, you
Only
hand them
played one of one flavor.
right. I mean, there's a reason they made the D&D the little box at the starters edition or whatever they call it. There's a reason they made that, and the rule book in the thing is 30 pages thick. It's They're gonna here's the rules you need for now. Here's the characters that we've provided you.
Love GURPS Light for that.
Right, same
Yeah.
thing. I mean, and there's a lot of games that do that.
It's an interesting
Even
thing.
Hero did that.
We forget. We spew this gobbledygook, and we're telling it to you, and we don't even think twice about it. We say things like AC, and sometimes we don't even say what the actual word is.
Yeah, we
But-
still fuck it up, and we've been doing it this
people
long.
coming in, listening to this, it's just they're like, what the hell? We have a guy in our band that has never gamed in our life, and we were talking about stuff, and he walked over to somebody else who does sports, and he goes, they're over there having a conversation. I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't even know what the words are using. and I laughed, but you know what? That is an actual thing.
Yeah.
If you're not even exposed a little bit to this,
It's a
genre,
language. It's
it
completely
is.
different
It is.
language.
It is.
Absolutely.
So don't underestimate how complicated that is.
Yeah. And if
And
one person,
intimidating.
yeah, and if one person's asking the question, you can guarantee someone else at the table has the same question.
Is relieved that someone else
Yes.
asked
Somebody
it.
else was brave enough to ask.
Yes.
Now you can get frustrated if someone asks the question and the next person asks the same question. Then you can
Right,
get
and
frustrated.
at the same table in the same session. Yeah.
And then what you can do is you can do my thing where I'm like, all right, can Phil, you just asked that question. Could you please answer that question for Jim? All right, thank you for helping.
When-
All right, good helpers.
When I'm at work and I'm having to lead a section or something, long story short, I will oftentimes over-explain things, and I say to them, forgive me if I'm being pedantic.
Yeah.
But this is how I want it done. I'll show it to you and all this. If you have any questions, let me know. And what I do is I want to give them the freedom to ask questions, or at least tell me, oh, no, don't worry. No, you're not being pedantic. It's fine. Because I would rather over-explain it.
Oh, sure. Then have it done wrong and have to do it again.
Right, and then not
Yes.
have them understand because they're too proud to ask or to show me. So I oftentimes will overdo it, and it gives them the out. But when I say things like, excuse me if I'm being pedantic, I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
And then explain it to them again. And there's no malice involved. It's simply a matter of me trying to be clear, because I understand that sometimes things get forgotten, get lost.
Yep.
And it's a neat trick to let your players know, rather than getting frustrated at them, and let it, because it can happen. You know, give them the opportunity to say, no, it's okay. Explain it to us again.
All right.
Sorry.
No.
I think so, and I think it's interesting that we have so many emails about memory in this particular.
Right, yeah.
It's
And
funny,
D&D.
they
It
do
always
that.
just happens,
Yeah.
and it's not intentional.
I've forgotten how many emails we got.
Should we end with a song? Since we got 3 bloggers.
What, live right now? Right here?
Do it.
Yeah. Well, let me close the show and then we'll do it.
Okay.
Oh, fuck. I gotta be able to turn that down. I can't be fucking tape on it. Thank you for joining us for season 24, episode 2 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
I'm Stork.
I'm Joey.
And don't forget, tomorrow, 7 p.m. Pacific time at the Queen Mary. Come and see us. $25 at the door. QueenMary.com for information. And also, we have Game Section Weekend. We'll see you next Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. HappyJacks.org/live. Thank you very much. We'll leave with a song.
Say bye.
Bye. Are we gonna? If we're gonna sing.
Yeah, we'll sing a song.
Dungeons and Dragons, hero, pathfinder, fate or savage lands, evil plots will be usurping, though we could do with less burping. Happy Jack's podcast will be douchebags all.
That's.
Are we ready?
It's an E, isn't it? It's not F, it's an E, isn't it?
Of all the birds that ever I see. Is that good? That sound fine? Of all the birds that ever I see. Yeah? It's too high?
Fair enough, let's try it.
1, 2, dun, 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 dun.
Of all the birds that ever I see, the owl is the fairest in her degree. For all the day long she sits in a tree, and when the night comes, away flies she. To wit, to woo, to whom drinks house her knave to thee. This song is well sung, and I make you a vow that he is a knave that drinketh now. Nose, nose, jolly red nose, and what gave thee thy jolly red nose? Cinnamon and ginger, nutmeg and cloves, and that gave thee my jolly red nose. I care for no fool whose purse is not full, but he that hath money I never find dull. And if he still has it when hence he doth go, I'll trample my tankard and never drink more. A rack, a roo, to whom drinks house her knave to thee. This song is well sung, and I make you a vow that he is a knave that drinketh now. Nose, nose, jolly red nose, and what gave thee thy jolly red nose? Cinnamon and ginger, nutmeg and cloves, and that gave me my jolly red nose. I'll not have a woman who's never been tried, but give me a wanton to lie by my side. And this I do use as a rule of my life, that wanton is best who's another man's wife. Cuckoo, cuckoo, to whom drinks thou, sir knave? To thee. This song is well sung, and I make you a vow that he is a knave that drinketh now. Nose, nose, jolly red nose, and what gave thee thy jolly red nose? Cinnamon and ginger, nutmeg and cloves, and that gave me my jolly red nose. Nose, nose, jolly red nose, and what gave thee thy jolly red nose? Cinnamon and ginger, nutmeg and cloves, and that gave me my jolly red nose.
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
I've got information, man. New shit has come to light.
No, Johnny, these men are nihilists. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Why problem make when you no problem have, you don't want to make?